is Omar Haidari. I'm born and raised in Kabul. I studied law and political science in Kabul University. I have always worked with the civil society, with the medias, and I have been actively involved in human rights uh, and standing against all the atrocities that has been happening in Afghanistan from the governments, from the warlords, from the Taliban. Um, so I have been an activist in Kabul for quite a while, and I ran a charity organization called Help the Street Children in Afghanistan. I founded it in 2014. The intention was to help the children and the women in Afghanistan to promote sport, to promote human rights, and to provide more opportunities for them to get involved in the society. We had nearly 30,000 children below the age of 12 in Kabul that were forced to work on the streets. So my intention was to come up with a project, something like from street to school. I was doing fundraisings, crowdfundings to find people's families from abroad to take responsibility and help a kid per family. It went well until I left. So and then I moved to Germany for 4.5 years ago. Uh, I studied in an American school, Bard College Berlin. I studied humanities program focused on ethics and politics, but my concentration was always on migration. Um, I've been volunteering with a couple of organizations in Germany ever since I've been here. Uh, and then for the past 2 years, I have made a target, a goal for myself to start raising awareness about the facts on the grounds in Afghanistan because in the West, most media, most people are only exposed to certain narratives that are imposed, that are created, that works with the policies that the Western countries have towards Afghanistan. So my goal was to raise awareness about Afghanistan, what's happening there from the ground, and always um, using local media and local journalists, local reporters, um, and uh, and the intention was to kind of raise awareness among the Afghan diaspora because the long decades of wars in Afghanistan have made people numb and desensitized towards the tragedies that happens in Afghanistan. And when people are detached from knowing what's happening in Afghanistan, this eventually leads to this numbness. Um, and and not being exposed to quite medias in that actually report from Afghanistan. Um, there are like tens and countless of incidents that happen that violated human rights, women rights. It was oppression of women. Um, it would barely get coverage in the Western media, um, unless it was really, really huge. Unless it was, I really had no idea that what requirements they had for to put Afghanistan in their headlines. Sometimes I thought that probably they would think that at least in an attack there should be like 100, 200 kids should be killed in order to become so emotional and trendy to put it on your headlines and coverage. So this bothered me a lot, and that was one main reason why I started researching, creating contents and data, and trying to raise awareness in a way that people would get attracted to it, people would read it, and apparently it's going well. But yeah.
Right, Omar. So, I mean, as the world knows right now, and world is also watching blindly or however they are, can you give us an insight about what is happening in Afghanistan right now? A lot of people are telling about it, but it's great to know about perspectives. So, could you tell us what's happening in Afghanistan right now and what's been happening?
um, there is a humanitarian crisis right now happening. In the past, ever since on February 20, in month of February 2020, the United States signed a deal with the Taliban, um, and that deal had conditions where the US had to release 5,500 prisoners of the Taliban, and in return, Taliban would agree to start an intra-Afghan negotiations with the Afghan people, and there were other conditions such as Taliban will never allow the Afghan geography used against the benefits of the US or any terrorist groups that are against the US. But in return, the demands and conditions put for Taliban were that they will not attack big cities. Uh, they will respect human rights, basic human rights. With the help of UN and other Islamic institutions, they will uh, come up to an agreement in a negotiation with the Afghan people. Um, uh, but these were like the main conditions that the U.S. and Taliban had, and since February 2020, the Taliban hasn't shot a single bullet towards any foreigner, even though their jihad and legitimacy has been based on war and fight against the colonizers, against the non-Muslims. But since February 2020, there have been tens of thousands of casualties, both the Afghan army and the Afghan civilians. Um, there were institutions, Islamic institutions, starting from Mecca to Malaysia to Bangladesh to India and many countries around the world. They raised their voice and said that the Taliban's jihad has no longer any legitimacy, not within the context of religion, not anywhere else. Even from Mecca, people started shouting from the Mecca's mosque that this is no longer legitimate. But then there were certain countries that kept uh, their support to the Taliban. So Taliban violated most of the conditions that were put by the US, and US and their allies ignored that. Instead of putting sanctions on Taliban, uh, putting sanctions on those who backs Taliban, who contributes to this terrorist group. Taliban attacked big cities. That was a violation of the peace deal. Taliban committed war crimes like ethnic cleansing, and they killed 200 civilians of a tribe that they always had problems with in Kandahar. Um, they abducted women over 15 years old, below 45, in the places where they captured. This was another violation of human rights. Um, there was another video of a 11 years old kid. He was tortured. He was lashed like 100 times because his father worked in the Afghan army. Um, there was another triggering content that 2 weeks ago I saw. It was from Ghazni province. There was they captured the entire province for days now, and then there are a couple of Taliban in a car on the road. They're riding, and then they suddenly see a motorbike next to their car riding, and they notices the Afghanistan flag. So the motorbike with the flag on it, a young guy on the motorbike was riding this on the road, and then this Taliban, two, three people in the car, they say that it's a flag installed by the colonizers, and one of the guys says, take out the gun and shoot him right in the head, and they do that. And they take out the gun. The guy on the motorbike has no idea, a young person with a little small flag of Afghanistan over his motorbike. They shoot him right in the head on a cold blood. The reason why I mentioned this, that the international community did not take this guarantee from the Taliban, that they will protect the Afghan civilians, that they will respect the human rights. Um, what's so scary about Taliban is that every single individual or member of them has the authority to make decisions over life and death of people, and it's very, very scary. So Taliban captured Kabul 3 days ago. During the last month, we had 4 million internally displaced people out of 4 million, half a million were in Kabul, and that fled from the areas that Taliban captured. Um, they were sleeping, spending nights without shelter on the streets, on the parks, with no medical cares, no food, and there were lots of elderly people, children, and women among these people. Um, the problem is that the way this group is imposed and what's happening in Afghanistan tells us that Afghans didn't want it, Taliban, didn't want Taliban. Why were there be 4 million displaced people? Why were people running away from the places captured by Taliban? Only those who could, who had the opportunity, could run. Um, and even when Taliban captured Kabul, the way the Kabul people behave, the fear among them, the anxiety and the rush towards running towards airports, it implies that what is being imposed about on Afghans and on Afghanistan. Um, so only in past month, according to the UN report, 1,000 civilians died. 60% of them were women and children. Um, there has been assassinations, target killings. In Mazar province, 2 weeks ago, Taliban shot a young girl, and she was accused for not properly dressing, not according to Sharia. And another accusation was that she was out without a man. Right now, um, everybody, there are like, you probably have heard from like UK, New Zealand, Canada, USA, India, Germany, and many other European countries are providing a big amount of asylums for Afghan refugees, and they're trying to evacuate Afghans. And a lot of people wants to leave Afghanistan and wouldn't want to live under a Taliban regime, which we in the entire world knows from 1996 to 2001. So right now the situation there is filled with fear, anxiety. People had to adopt it, because if the international community in the West has abandoned the people and they imposed a regime upon people without the consent of the people in our country. So what is the option? According to UN, there are like half a million. Afghanistan is right now the deadliest country in the world. In Afghanistan, 18 million people out of 36 million, 18 million people are in urgent humanitarian need, and they need to be provided with clean water or food and shelter. In a situation like this, where there's like problems, poverty, security, survival, in this situation, anybody would adopt anything to survive. Um, um, so yeah, this is what the situation has been in the past days, in the past months in Afghanistan, and how the US and their allies betrayed the Afghan nation, the Afghan people. I mean, we could easily see that how people react, want to leave, want to flee, want to escape all those places. Let's just also keep in mind that these are those people who can, and they're relatively in a better position than those 18 million people who are in urgent humanitarian need.
Umar, I want to know that what does the future looks like now from your eye and from your experience? What is the future? What are you imagining?
Based on what I read, what I see, the people I talk to, the local medias I follow, the friends I see. First, it's gonna be a big step for Afghanistan. That it certainly will be a pause in development and going further, because when the US and its ally decided to leave Afghanistan, they also said that they will take everyone who worked with them in military or in non military organizations and institutions in Afghanistan. Those people were tens of thousands of people that worked with the NATO and with the US. Those people were a big factor of circulating the economy of Afghanistan inside Afghanistan. Each one of them supported a family that they had. So, and then most of them educated people. Um, so, taking out this active, educated uh, population of the society, and then it's of course affecting the economy first, and then the development partially, and then leaving the country to a regime that didn't have any achievement, any development, if it was human rights or if it was economy, if it was education during their 5 years of regime. One generation has been raised without experiencing the dark era of Taliban, where they imposed, where they control and observe and dictate every step you take in life, every individual step, the way you dress, the way you talk, where you go, how you look like, and like every personal choice. And one generation has lived without these imposed extreme policies. Um, Unlike the past generations who experienced war, civil war, Taliban era, this generation experienced freedom, partial democracy, partial human rights. I mean, it wasn't the greatest one, it wasn't perfect one, but it was a good start for us, for democracy, for human rights, for freedom of speech, for the active participation of women in the society, and for the voice women had. We have women ambassadors, we have women ministers, parliament members, uh, nearly 35 percentage of the all students around the countries is shaped by females. In Herat, we have 60 percentage female students and 40 men. Um, Similarly, we had like the music institutions for girls, and we had that basically raised awareness and kind of give a different name of Afghanistan to the world by introducing the Afghanistan music and culture and traditions. Um, so all these differences is gonna resist towards the this dark era, this extreme imposed ideologies upon them. They are not used to be controlled and dictate on how to think and how to believe and what to do and how to dress. There might not be rapid reactions because its situation is scary and filled with anxiety and everybody's in a survival mood. But once they see that this is what it is imposed upon us in the international communities, the way they abandoned us, uh, and the way they helped Taliban take over by giving them legitimacy, recognition, platform, voice. Um, if people understands that the world is gonna abandon like this and allow these this terrorist group to govern us, then there will be resistance. There will be resistance because it's ideological. It's this generation does not no longer lives in I don't know in 1800s or 1700s. Now there is technology, there is music, there is freedom of speech. There people can study. They people. I don't think that everyone like when I say that there will be resistance from people inside the country. Um, like yesterday, one of the Western medias, a UN reporter, a woman, went in Kabul to make reports, and and in order to normalize and kind of stereotype the situation there, she wore this kind of like hijab and not hijab, like the scarf that she wore was like just showing that what Taliban prefers or see want to see women in it. That was not an Afghan culture, nor did the Taliban impose that type of dressing. It was a different type of dressing. She is creating the stereotypes for oppress for that contributes to the oppression of Afghan women, while in the meantime women are resisting in Kabul towards Taliban. They went to their jobs, they protested in front of Taliban while they were kind of insulted by the Taliban that go away and we will think about giving you your rights under the context of the Sharia. And women came out, protested. Women came out the way they are raised, the way they are taught, the way they feel themselves so free. They came out to the TVs, to their jobs, to everywhere. What I'm saying here is that the Taliban are kind of being normalized by the Western media. Uh, they are contributing that how Taliban has changed, how Taliban allows people to live, how Taliban gives rights to people. Who are Taliban to give me my right?
Yeah, yeah. Omar, I was coming to this point only that a lot of people are saying that Taliban has taken a different approach this time. This time they have come with a different agenda, and it might be because the eyes are on them, the world is on them, and we are watching them. What do you think about this? Is this an issue, or is this nothing, or it's real? Or like how do you explain this?
So again, I wanted to bring this up now that the US and its ally has made a deal with them. In order to justify that deal, uh, they will run any kind of narrative that exists there. President Joe Biden, his speech was only focused on this 20 years, but he doesn't talk about how they funded, trained, and invested on Mujahideen to fight the Soviet Union, and then they left Afghanistan for Mujahideen, that they fought among each other, and there was a civil war that caused 10 million displaced people, 10 million um, uh, uh, to migrated to Iran and into Pakistan and to the rest of the world. They took no responsibility for that. This is not something that I just say. It is like on videos, Hillary Clinton, George W. Bush, they all says that this was the only mission, and then it was no longer important to us what was happening after that radical extreme groups that we trained there. Um, and then Taliban taking over, Taliban being in relation and in contact and providing safe havens to Al Qaeda that caused the 9/11 and thousands of lives in New York. And then they take the audacity to come and bombard, to invade the entire country, and to make another couple of millions of Afghans run away. And then after that, they bring their own people like Hamid Karzai from the United States, and make this their own democracy and government, which they fed to these the same warlords and mujahideen that they trained to fight the Soviet Union. They brought these, they give them so much money, and that's why the Afghanistan government became very corrupt, and it didn't function well. Uh, so this corruption, this radicalism, this civil war, this was a direct intervention of the United States that now they are trying to get rid of its responsibility and limit their entire intervention to the past 20 years, that we went there to fight against war on the to go and fight against, I don't know, war on the terror, the famous term, or for women rights, or for human rights, or for democracy, or killing Al Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, which apparently after destroying my entire country, they find out that the guy is living somewhere else. Um, so why I say this is that the US and its allies cannot ignore the responsibility of what's happening in Afghanistan. They have contributed, and they have directly contributed towards it. Um, right now, the same people are back in the country. Uh, if the governments were installed, it was by the US. If Mujahideen came into being, it was funded by the US. If the name of democracy was being... So 20 years ago, the United States came to emancipate Afghans from Taliban. And then after 20 years, they emancipated Taliban from Taliban. They took the power from Taliban and gave it back to the Taliban. Uh, the reason why... when... And there was another important point to this, was that when I want to mention this in response to the Joe Biden calling the Afghan army weak and coward, is when the Afghan government and the Afghan people resisted to the decision made by the US about the releasing of 5,500 prisoners. I think back then it was Mike Pompeo, the Minister of Foreign Affairs for United States. I hope I'm not wrong with that, but he said that it will directly threaten the Afghan government, that it will have consequences. When they resisted for a few days, the United States suspended billion-dollar aid to Afghanistan, knowing that the Afghan government, the Afghan people, the Afghanistan institutions are dependent on the foreign aid. So if you take that aid away from them, they become vulnerable. Afghanistan is no longer functioning. And It's from the very main reasons that how they created this corrupt government by bringing those corrupt people. So they forced the Afghan people without their consent to release these 5,500 people. They made a condition with the Taliban that these prisoners will not go back to the battlefields. UN reported that 85% of the prisoners released are back with the Taliban fighting against the Afghan army. So this is like the reason, one major reason, one factor why Taliban became so intensely strong or capturing places and thing was because the United States, under the name of peace talks in Doha, they put a hold on the Afghan army. They always ask the Afghan government and Afghanistan army to stay in a defensive mode, and that's to show our interest and will for peace, to show the world that okay, Afghanistan doesn't want to fight. That's why they're defensive. For years, for 20 years, Afghan army were in a defensive position because they were told to, they were asked to. That was one way to show the world that we don't want to fight, we want to negotiate, we want peace, no matter how costly that peace is. But Taliban used this opportunity to recruit, re-emerge, um, recollect different terrorist groups from different countries, uh, relocate their free prisoners that they recently got it from the US Taliban agreement, and came very, very strong while the United States put Afghan army on hold for since February 2020 to be. Before that, it was always defensive too, and at this time to be defensive and only defend when the Taliban attack. So this was one reason that puts responsibility on the United States and their foreign policy's failure in Afghanistan, and then justifying it with calling Afghan people cowards.
So
Yeah.
we've lived in this part of the world, such as India, and we've always seen Taliban as a terrorist organization. And now, when the some countries of the world are legitimizing their resistance by by having talks with them, such as China, Russia, and more,
We call
and
them
then
militants also.
and calling them, changing the dialect to militants from terrorists, giving them a lower status, the terrorist organization. And then there are some countries who are still against them, such as Canada, and even India is acting against it. So even the Taliban is having their press conferences, such as a legitimate government organization, and they talk about women. They have been talking a lot about women, as you were talking about as well. They were saying that they will have their own rights within the Islamic principles. But what exactly will they snatch? Like they were shutting salons in Kabul. What exactly would they do? What are these laws within the Islamic principles, as they say?
When they captured Herat province 2 weeks ago, they went to the schools and universities of the women and asked them to leave and never come back here. Uh, Earlier, I said that when they say that we will allow women to have their rights under Sharia, does that mean that they didn't have Sharia in the 1995 and 1996 to 2001? Wasn't that Sharia, or did they upgrade, or did they get to explore the new version of Islam in Sharia this time that they are changed? No, it's gonna be as much barbaric, as much oppressive as it was. Otherwise, their entire existence means nothing, and their legitimacy is gone. At least they don't have it, but the one that they make and convince their militants and their members and terrorist groups to fight is that this is jihad and this is for our country and for our God. So if they accept that what they did in 1996 was wrong publicly, that it wasn't Sharia law, then there are hopes that they might be changed. But if they keep saying and using the same terminology and context that we will allow you to have your rights under Sharia, it just directly takes you back to who they are, what they believe in, based on what they have been doing in the past weeks, past days, past months. So what they would do is impose a complete way of dressing on women, the way they will force them to have always a man observe and control them when they are outside. They won't be allowed to travel alone anywhere. Again, like in 1995, uh, during Taliban, when people would come back from the countries they migrated to and they would want to take a tazkira or identification card, Taliban wouldn't even write your mother's name or your sister's name. They wouldn't allow you. They would just guess something or just add BB or BB, just like they completely dehumanize women. They completely take the voice in the existence of women from the society. According to Sharia, well, what they say is, what the Sharia they believe in is that woman is never to become a leader. Uh, so it means women cannot become judges. Women can never be in positions where they can make decisions. So this is what's gonna happen. And if the international community and if people in the world doesn't show their international solidarity and pressure their governments to stop legitimizing this terrorist group, to put an end by normalizing them, to criticize their medias, their mainstream medias that make focus on these normalization of this terrorist group rather than the war crimes they are committing, rather than oppressions they're putting in place. No, it's not normal. It's not normalized. It's nothing to do with Afghanistan.
So you are saying that we as citizens and we as neighbors, we can pressurize our government to, not to act on this and to not legitimize the group as somebody important and have dialogues with the group. And coming to the point, I'll straight ask you that how can we help now? Like, what should we do? A lot of people are saying that we want to donate, we want to give money and funding to your organizations who are working on ground. But are they really working on ground? Are there some NGOs on ground? How can we help now? What is that one basic step?
Those those are temporary responses and reactions towards the humanitarian crisis, not the disasters that is taking place in Afghanistan. That's only help for those people that are homeless now, without shelter, without food, living on the streets and on parks. Well, there used to be a lot of individuals and organizations in Afghanistan that I appreciate their great work in times like this where there is war all over country, or there was war all over country. It's just now war everywhere. But unfortunately, ever since the Taliban captured Kabul, banks aren't working. They aren't giving out cash money. The airports there are no flights, only military flights right now for the past days. A lot of investment run away from Afghanistan because people doesn't trust Taliban, and they took out their money, which important part of a factor to the circulation of our economy in the country that would provide or affect thousands of other lives, thousands of other people's economical situation right now. There are no banks, so right now it's a bit hard. Even people are very much in need of support and humanitarian support. Including many other Afghans, human rights activists, journalists, artists outside Afghanistan, we raised funds, and we right now there are a lot of funds on pending, just so we find a way to distribute it, to send it back so people can use that money because people really need it. But this was just a response to the humanitarian crisis. What can people do about Taliban? There is an urgent need that the Taliban's each move and each step should be observed right now until they come to a conclusion what to do about Taliban. So from now on, everything Taliban does should be observed. Every step of them should be given coverage. Every move of them should be given coverage. They made a deal to the United States. If the United States represent themselves as the origin of democracy around the world, human rights, women rights. So they have the moral responsibility right now to follow and observe every step that the Taliban makes. Uh, they should observe every violation of basic rights and human rights, if it's towards women, if it's towards men, and everywhere. Now they are imposed there. There will be resistance. What we can expect from the people around the world is to uh, pressure their governments, make their governments talk, make their government change their policies, and make their governments to step back 1 year and step back to the table that they were sitting with the Taliban, and the dreams that they had showed to people that we will negotiate, and no country in the world will accept the emirate of Taliban. This has been said quite clearly in more than 10 times in the US Taliban agreement that no country will recognize the Taliban, the Emirates of Taliban, including the UN. UN's last week report said that they will not allow the re-emergence of the Emirate of Taliban. So what does this mean? Taliban are all over the country, and that is the Emirate of Taliban. Their flags are all over the country. They took down the Republic's flag. Even on Wikipedia, they changed them.
Right.
Uh, so
You
if
know,
you don't respect and stand for the agreement, you as the most strongest country in the world, I'm talking about the United States, which allied the NATO, if you don't stand by what you said, if you don't stand by the agreement and condition that you wrote and you signed, then basically people should lose hope in humanity,
All right.
in democracy, and women's rights. So they should stand by what they said. They should not recognize the Emirate of Taliban. They should push and put sanctions on Taliban and bring them back to the table and bring back the republic and take the Afghan people and Afghan representative to talk for themselves on those table and negotiate and come into a conclusion, come into an agreement, not emirate. That will be a republic. That's what the Afghan people want. That's what the Afghan people stand for. So that's what we can do as an international community. That's how we can show our solidarity, to observe everything they do, to push our governments for what they have agreed upon. And if they don't, they should, if the Taliban doesn't bow to what they have agreed upon, because they signed that agreement too. They signed the agreement where the United States wrote that the UN and the US will never accept and recognize the Emirate of Taliban. So it means Taliban also consent to this. They signed the deal. So this needs to be implemented. Therefore, it's very much need that people start talking about it, people start writing about it, people join protests and ask the governments to implement that deal, that you guys made without the consent of the Afghans. Even leave alone the Afghan people, you kicked them out, you didn't make the consent, but you made that agreement, you made those conditions to show the world that this is kind of a compromise and flexible agreement with a terrorist group, and this is the best we can take out of them. You did. You made them sign it. Just now implement it. No to Emirate of Taliban. So push those people, put pressure on those people who support that terrorist group, put sanctions, diplomatic sanctions, and bring back Taliban to the table. Bring back the Afghan representative to the table. Bring back the woman, the elder, the young, the youth, from all classes and all sides of the society. Bring them on the table. Ask them that what do you want, and negotiate with it, and make them to do a conclusion. Because Taliban, for their survival, they need to have diplomatic relations with the countries around the world. And the countries around the world cannot take a blind eye on the violation of human rights, basic rights, freedom of speech, and all these things. They supporting the Emirate of Taliban means they supporting their regime, they supporting their ideology. So yeah, that is my suggestion to the people around the world on how they can help. It's not going to be rapid, but it's going to make a lot of difference to pressure our governments to implement that deal, that agreement that they signed with the Taliban.
so, and there are a lot of Afghanis present in India and in other parts of the world, such as you also. And you are also doing something in Germany. You can talk about that and let the Indian Afghanis know what can do. We also have friends here in India who are Afghanis, and some of them are very tensed. They're clueless. Their mind isn't working in a stable condition because they can't really think of what to do. Is there a suggestion for them? What can they do? We are assuming we would see a wave of Afghanis traveling to India to take refuge, or however it is. What could they do for their country sitting in India?
Since the Taliban captured all over country, there has been very little to no access to internet, to media, to electricity. So this is a direct request. They can do is to help Afghans spread their voices, their problems to the world. They might not be able to do it. Help them create contents. Help them create reports. record the war crimes taking place in Afghanistan, because I don't think people will be able to do that in Afghanistan in a situation where the Taliban has control all over the place, and help them create an international solidarity for Afghanistan, help them create a strong, united, and collective voice to make that deal and agreement implemented. So become their voice by spreading, by raising their voice, by helping them recording all those war crimes committed by the Taliban, um, by speaking to them, by offering them help however way you can, if it's through medical, if it's education, if it's uh, um, support them regardless of who in that country is, because that isn't what Afghan people wanted for themselves. It's just imposed upon them. So whatever it takes, help them with them. If it's providing them scholarships, if it's uh, helping them with the healthcare and medical supports, since we are still living in pandemic, which Afghans completely forgot, which anyways isn't the priority right now to anyone there. So I think the important way to support and help Afghans right now is to become their voice, and provide what they are lacking at the moment in Afghanistan and these crises that we have, and those 500,000 people we have living on the streets.
Also, there is UNHRC's. What is their role? Like, people are going to be fleeing, and people are fleeing, and people are taking refuge, asylums in other countries. And it seems like a very temporary solution, because even India says that you can come here for 6 months, and after that they
Mm.
haven't disclosed as yet. And so, such as us, other countries are even they're on the same page with that. This all of this seems like a temporary solution to run away from the problem. Do you see a bigger solution to this, or we have to wait and analyze the situation and then think about it?
Yeah, and also the footage of the Kabul airport shows that a lot of people are desperate to leave. They don't want to live in Afghanistan now. They don't want to live in their own land because of they are resisting Taliban, and that shows, that image shows, that chaos shows that. So how can the countries, what should they do? Like how can we assist, and how can we welcome all these people, and what should happen, and what do you think about this?
Well, this has been actually the situation and experience that generations in Afghanistan faced, where they had to lose everything they had, everything they worked for, move into a new place with an uncertain future, and start everything all over again from zero. That many Afghans did during the 80s and 90s and beginning 2000s. Many of them started new lives, and this has been happening towards Afghans. For now, I think the best solution is that those people settle down, at least have access to those basic things that they need, until the international community and the world figure out what are they going to do with the things they imposed about Afghanistan. What are they going to do about the agreement that they signed with the Taliban? Are they going to uh, implement that agreement or not? So that's one way of looking at this as a temporary situation. If in case they could implement, then there might not be such a big and intensive humanitarian crisis. Um, if that won't happen, then this will be a problem. Afghans will move like they have always done it for the past 56 years, and they will start all over again. Uh, those who couldn't and who cannot move, they have no choice but to adopt and eventually wait for the times and opportunities to resist and to reemerge. Um, what what I'm disappointed from the human rights organization in the United Nations office is that the Taliban attacked their office and headquarters in Taliban in Herat province 3 weeks ago. They attacked a UN office. They killed a guard that was protecting the UN people. They injured many of them. Um, the response and the reaction from the UN was very disappointing. It was merely a condemnation, a humble request from the Taliban not to repeat it, not to do this. This was disappointing. While in the rest of the world, if a famous privileged singer loses her dogs, the world go crazy, the media goes crazy. If in the UK the king and queen's family have a grandchild, the world goes crazy about it. But there is an attack, a direct attack from a terrorist group on the United Nations office. That is the core that gives legitimacy to democracy, to human rights. Their existence is limited to holding up the democracy and human rights. They are being attacked. It means Taliban are attacking the human rights and democracy all over the world. There is a United Nation that is supported by all countries around the world. The reaction from them was very disappointing, and it just refreshes my memories back from 1996, which apparently many are aware of that. Yeah. So temporarily, as I said, that the situation is that if the international community do not implement the agreement that they signed with the Taliban, there will be no solution. Afghans will be forced to start all over again wherever they can. And it's the responsibility of the US and the West to take as many Afghans
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
should.
as possible, as many Afghans that they don't want to live in under Taliban, because they didn't want Taliban, they resisted towards Taliban, and you made an agreement without their consent and brought the Taliban upon them. Answer.
There was some acknowledgement and appreciation of you and journalists around Afghanistan and spokesperson and people who are talking about it while they are there and outside the country. That's very brave, and because they are under direct threat, as what we understand. When we feel the anxiety over here talking about Afghanistan, we are far away and very in a very safe state. But people from Afghanistan are raising their voices. That's a very brave gesture. So, such as the journalists are under threat, is there any other community in Afghanistan who are really under threat under the regime of Taliban, who need more safety other than diplomats?
Almost almost everyone who opposes that ideology is under threat. But Taliban have shown a little bit extra. Like in Herat province, when they went there, they took down the flags of Imam Hussein, which the Shia population of Afghanistan put it up there because of the month of Mahram. Or they destroyed the statue of the leader of the resistant group of Hazara, the Mazari. Um, Similarly, we could also see this reactions toward the Sikh community in Afghanistan and other ethnic minorities. Taliban also killed 40 Hazara in Malistan district last month in Ghazni. So there are Hazara people, there are ethnic minorities, religious minorities that are more vulnerable to the Taliban and that regime. But in general, everyone who opposes their ideology, or every woman of Afghanistan, every child of Afghanistan who have never experienced and saw such a extreme, radical, fundamental regime, is opposed to this ideology, and they are all under threat. And being silenced right now, people being silenced regarding Taliban does not mean they accept it.
Right.
People do whatever it takes to survive, and they will do whatever it takes when they find opportunity to re-emerge, when they have the opportunity to do something about it.
Right. And we hope that day is in here again for Afghanistan.
Okay, so
Thank you.
thank you so much, Omar, for joining, for taking your time to do this. It was very important for all of us to understand. Sitting here in India, but we are with you in these difficult times, and I wish you all the best. And I hope this moves on and it keeps in the news, and we are talking about it continuously. And we'll make sure that we tell it to our friends, family, everybody to talk about it from
And
their
our
own
government.
individual level, and our government too. And thank you for this. I hope this was beneficial.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.